Something happened inside the European Southern Observatory's Communications Center in Garching, Germany, where a group of the planet's most senior astronomers walked into a locked conference room under the cover of a routine data review. No press release was drafted, no entry was placed on the public calendar, and no high-definition video stream was made available to the world. There was only silence, heavy wooden doors sealed shut from the inside, and a raw telemetry data set so profoundly explosive that the individuals directly responsible for interpreting our universe came to a terrifying consensus. They decided that human civilization was simply not prepared to handle the reality of what had just been discovered. The official cover label given to this high-level meeting was constructed using standard institutional jargon, a deliberately flat and bureaucratic title specifically calculated to attract zero curiosity from inquisitive journalists or independent observers. Yet behind those double doors, what unfolded on the high-resolution projection screens had nothing to do with standard institutional administrative maintenance. Top-tier astrophysicists and planetary scientists sat around a dark wooden conference table, staring in utter disbelief, attempting to figure out how to explain an orbital anomaly that fundamentally demolished every accepted model of natural cosmic phenomena. As they rigorously scrutinized the numbers, running calculation after calculation through high-performance computing clusters, the raw physical metrics stubbornly refused to comply with the simple, comforting narrative they desperately needed to present to the global public. The mysterious object driving this intense behind-the-scenes panic was formally identified as 3I Atlas. It had swept through Earth's immediate cosmic neighborhood, initially triggering a wave of standard excitement across the global astronomical community. That initial reaction was characterized by cautious scientific language, restrained optimism, and the traditionally sluggish pace of academic peer review. The public narrative, carefully crafted and released through primary governmental news channels, was intentionally kept tidy, predictable, and deeply reassuring to the general population. World-renowned media outlets were provided with pre-approved press packets explaining that observers had merely witnessed an unusually large, highly exotic, but ultimately natural interstellar comet. This visitor was described as a frozen wanderer, originating from a distant, unknown star system, undergoing completely expected thermal stress and violent surface fracturing as it looped tightly around the intense heat of our sun. However, that official explanation contained a massive, catastrophic flaw. The underlying, unedited telemetry recorded by deep space tracking stations revealed a picture that contradicted the public statement in almost every single technical detail. According to an internal, highly classified tracking model designated the Pursuit dataset, 3I Atlas was not undergoing chaotic thermal destruction at all. It was systematically deploying. The physical and conceptual distinction between those two words is not a matter of mere semantics. It is a fundamental shift in our understanding of reality. Thermal fragmentation is chaotic, unpredictable destruction. It is a catastrophic structural collapse that occurs when an unstable, weakly bound natural object can no longer hold itself together under extreme physical stress. Deployment is the exact opposite. Deployment represents absolute mechanical control, operational precision, and intent. It is the deliberate, organized release of individual operational components according to a pre-programmed, highly sophisticated blueprint. Nature breaks apart under stress, but engineered systems deploy. The European JUICE spacecraft happened to be positioned in exceptionally close physical proximity to 3I Atlas during its window of nearest approach to Earth. The raw data captured by its onboard instruments during those brief, crucial hours confronted top institutional authorities with a situation defined by sheer existential urgency. Mass loss calculations recorded during peak activity reached an astounding 1.8 million kilograms per second. To truly understand the gravity of that metric, imagine nearly 2 million kilograms of solid material vanishing into the vacuum of space every single second, sustained over hours without interruption. Standard cometary physics offers a firm prediction for an object shedding mass at such a violent rate. It should disintegrate into an expanding, chaotic dust cloud spread across millions of kilometers. Yet 3I Atlas did not disintegrate. it did not scatter. Instead, it released mass in geometrically precise, directional streams, as if every particle was being intentionally guided according to architectural blueprints integrated into the structure long before it ever crossed into our solar system. Inside that locked conference room, the world's top scientific minds realized they were looking at engineering, and they were tasked with deciding how much of that truth the human race would ever be permitted to see. The desperate search for a conventional, innocent scientific explanation began immediately, but the hard telemetry consistently refused to play along. High-resolution imaging files retrieved from the primary imaging array on board the JUICE spacecraft captured what top researchers later described in private correspondence as the definitive forensic exhibit of the entire encounter. Rather than recording the violent, asymmetric gas explosions typically seen when a volatile natural comet boils under direct sunlight, the optical sensors documented highly organized, evenly spaced vent structures positioned along the main body. These structural vents released dense streams of fine material in precise, directional geometry with a degree of mechanical symmetry that standard natural processes simply cannot generate. These were clearly not random cracks or stress fractures tearing through a fragile chunk of dirty ice. They were specialized mechanical apertures operating strictly within design parameters. While solar-facing jets can occasionally form on standard comets when localized subsurface ice pockets sublimate rapidly, the physical phenomena recorded on 3I Atlas bypassed every limit of passive solar heating. The directional vents did not scale up their activity gradually as the object moved closer to the thermal core of the solar system, nor did they respond proportionally to fluctuations in solar radiation. Instead, they activated instantly and simultaneously, switching on like an integrated system responding to an internal computer command rather than an external heat source. The behavior was less like a melting block of space ice and more like a complex machine activating its subsystems via an automated internal trigger. The chemical analysis of the ejected material pushed the conventional natural model far beyond its breaking point. Spectroscopic absorption data revealed massive concentrations of refined metallic elements, particularly nickel and iron, present at levels thousands of times higher than any natural cometary core ever surveyed. Standard comets are primarily composed of water ice, frozen methane, dust, and light organic compounds. They do not contain dense metallic cores, nor do they vent vaporized metals into space. Furthermore, the extreme energy required to vaporize nickel and iron into a gas state cannot be generated by passive sunlight at the distances 3I Atlas was traveling. Something deep inside the core was actively generating immense internal thermal energy, producing enough localized pressure to accelerate dense metallic particles into the void at hypervelocity speeds across thousands of kilometers of surrounding space. The physical motion of the object introduced yet another layer of impossibility to an already overwhelming set of data. As the object reached its closest orbital point to Earth, the rotation profile of its central mass underwent a sudden, highly controlled acceleration. This specific change in rotational speed followed a clean mathematical curve that aerospace engineers immediately recognized as spin stabilization. This precise mechanical procedure is routinely used in spacecraft trajectory planning to stabilize a probe, protect structural integrity, and maintain proper antenna alignment. When a standard, loosely bound natural comet experiences rapid rotational acceleration, centrifugal forces quickly overcome its weak gravity, causing it to fragment into pieces. Yet 3I Atlas executed this acceleration while simultaneously releasing calculated amounts of mass from specific vent locations at exact time intervals. By doing so, it perfectly offset the dangerous internal stress, achieving a stable rotational state without sustaining any structural damage whatsoever. Nature does not perform complex, dynamic thrust vector balancing by accident. That degree of real-time physical control requires sensor arrays, processing power, and operational thrust mechanics. Advanced orbital tracking matrices interpreted this entire maneuver as a deliberate axis realignment, optimizing the object's orientation for the next phase of its transit as it prepped for a high-velocity encounter with the intense gravitational field of Jupiter. Then came the electromagnetic readings, which completely eliminated any remaining possibility that 3I Atlas was a standard astronomical body. Onboard magnetometers and radio frequency monitoring arrays on the JUICE spacecraft captured structured electromagnetic pulses operating within the kilohertz frequency spectrum. Crucially, these high-energy radio pulses were synchronized down to the millisecond with the activation of the directional metallic jets. While natural comets do interact with the solar wind to create broad, weak electromagnetic disturbances, they do not produce organized, sharply defined, repeating signal bursts. Comets do not transmit structured radio pulses. They never have in the history of radio astronomy. Yet this object was broadcasting with clear, repetitive intent. In the standard world of open scientific research, a discovery of this magnitude would normally spark immediate, intense global action. Scientists would race to publish preliminary papers, institutions would fight for credit, and researchers would debate publicly on international news broadcasts to claim their place in history. Science usually operates on open debate and intense personal ambition, which makes large-scale secrecy nearly impossible to maintain for long periods. Yet the aftermath of the 3I Atlas encounter broke this historical pattern in a way that was both sudden and absolute. Within weeks of the flyby, the very researchers who had initially raised cautious questions about the object's artificial characteristics went completely silent. Independent astronomers who had posted preliminary technical papers detailing the bizarre rotation and electromagnetic anomalies quietly retracted their work from public databases. Prominent astrophysicists who had previously appeared on television to discuss the strange readings began issuing carefully worded corrections. They systematically replaced their detailed technical observations with vague, reassuring statements claiming that further review had confirmed the object was merely a unique but completely natural comet. The global scientific community, which had initially been electrified by the most extraordinary interstellar event in human history, abruptly chose total, unified silence. A sudden, complete reversal of this scale across hundreds of independent research facilities does not occur naturally. Scientists have individual careers to advance, tenure to secure, and rivalries that naturally prevent them from adopting a single narrative without resistance. When researchers across multiple countries suddenly begin using the exact same vague phrasing overnight, it indicates that powerful institutional directives are actively enforcing narrative control. The key question is not whether the data was suppressed. The synchronized behavior of the scientific community makes that obvious, but rather what horrifying truths were contained within the raw telemetry that made absolute suppression appear to be the only responsible choice for global stability. The systematic gaps in the public data archives provide a clear roadmap of what occurred. Following the object's passage near Earth, the raw telemetry feeds from the JUICE spacecraft began experiencing unexplained blackouts. Entire hours of operational records were simply removed from public scientific servers. Spectroscopic scans vanished, optical frame sequences were marked as corrupted, and magnetic field logs cut out mid-transmission. Official statements cited standard deep space transmission delays and software glitches, which do occur in deep space missions. However, the timing of these blackouts was far too precise to be accidental. The data feeds went dark, specifically during the moments when 3I Atlas was exhibiting its most unnatural behaviors. Streaming failed during peak jet venting, logs cut out when the radio pulses spiked, and tracking feeds vanished during the rapid rotational shift. This was not a random series of technical glitches. It was a systematic, real-time censorship effort designed to scrub raw telemetry before it could be analyzed by independent researchers. To fill the void created by this missing data, major academic journals quickly began publishing complex, theoretical papers. These publications offered elaborate, highly convoluted mathematical models designed to reframe the object's strange behavior within the realm of standard physics. The heavy metallic jet emissions were described as rare evidence from an exotic, metal-rich star system. The organized radio pulses were brushed off as unusual interactions with local magnetic fields, and the precise spin stabilization sequence was buried under dense, abstract equations regarding the internal dynamics of collapsing space debris. Each paper seemed designed not to clarify the raw telemetry, but to obscure it under so much academic jargon that the general public would assume the entire matter had been thoroughly solved by qualified experts. What these official papers failed to address, however, was the unprecedented level of political cooperation occurring behind the scenes. Space agencies operating under competing global superpowers usually maintain strict independence and intense rivalries. The idea that these vastly different organizations would independently adopt the exact same messaging within the same brief window is mathematically implausible. Achieving that degree of international alignment requires a realization so massive and potentially destabilizing that nation-states willingly set aside their deep geopolitical conflicts to maintain a single, controlled narrative. As 3i Atlas continued its journey toward the outer edges of the solar system, moving farther away from the heating power of the sun, its physical light signature changed in a way that further undermined the official story. During its initial approach toward the inner solar system, the object displayed a deep reddish surface color. Astronomers typically attribute this red tint to tholins, complex organic molecules that gradually accumulate on icy surfaces exposed to harsh cosmic radiation over billions of years of interstellar travel. That red color was heavily emphasized by officials early on, as it supported the claim that the object was merely an ancient, dead piece of interstellar rock drifting through the void. However, as 3i Atlas turned away from the sun and began receding into the cold, dark reaches of outer space, its light spectrum underwent a radical transformation. The deep red coloration began to fade, and a distinct, brilliant green wavelength emerged and steadily intensified. Official spokespersons quickly claimed this green light was caused by diatomic carbon emissions, a known phenomenon where simple carbon gas is energized by intense sunlight to create a temporary green glow. But that explanation completely ignores fundamental chemical physics. Diatomic carbon molecules break down rapidly when exposed to solar radiation. Consequently, a natural carbon glow must weaken and fade as an object travels farther away from the sun's energy. For 3i Atlas, the green light signature did the exact opposite. It grew brighter and more defined as the object moved deeper into dark, cold space. This physical reality proved that a new, power-intensive process was being actively initiated from within the core of the object after it had already completed its solar flyby. Advanced spectral analysis suggests that this green emission was the optical signature of an active propulsion mechanism. Specifically, the high-velocity plasma exhaust of an advanced ion drive system using xenon or a similar heavy gas medium. An operational plasma propulsion drive cleanly accounts for every single anomaly documented during the entire encounter. The organized radial pulses, the controlled venting of heavy particles, the calculated orbital adjustments, the precise spin stabilization, and the sudden light shift. It explains the entire event because it points to a single conclusion. 3i Atlas was not a comet. It was an operational spacecraft. The realization that 3i Atlas was an artificial vessel equipped with active propulsion carries staggering implications. If the object was actively navigating, its orbital path was not dictated solely by the passive laws of gravity, but was being intentionally directed by an onboard intelligence. That navigation implies a technological capability far beyond current human understanding. A system designed to endure billions of years of interstellar travel while maintaining operational sensors capable of analyzing a foreign solar system from immense distances. This was not a dead piece of space debris drifting blindly through the galaxy, but a targeted probe sent by an advanced civilization that had identified our solar system as a destination of interest long before human civilization had even begun. To monitor this critical phase of the journey, primary space observatories, including the James Webb Space Telescope, were quietly retasked. Officially, these instruments were scheduled to perform routine atmospheric studies of Jupiter. In reality, according to leaked tracking logs, the telescopes were focused directly on 3i Atlas as it executed a high-velocity approach toward the giant planet. Scientists were using deep space infrared and magnetic sensors to track energy outputs, plasma signatures, and dynamic acceleration curves as the probe prepared to enter Jupiter's immense gravitational field. At the same time, global deep space radio arrays were aligned to intercept any high bandwidth data transmissions the probe might attempt to broadcast, as it utilized Jupiter's gravity to fling itself out of our solar system forever. Jupiter functions as the ultimate gravitational engine of our solar system. Its massive gravitational well dramatically bends the flight paths of passing objects, either capturing them into tight orbits or accelerating them toward escape velocity into interstellar space. However, for natural, loosely bound objects, a close approach to Jupiter is extremely dangerous. A famous example occurred when comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 strayed too close to the gas giant. Jupiter's intense gravitational forces physically tore the comet into dozens of individual fragments before pulling those pieces down to explode in its upper atmosphere. A standard, natural comet is essentially a loose collection of ice, dust, and gravel held together by very weak internal gravity. When such an object enters the extreme gravitational environment surrounding Jupiter, differential gravity creates massive physical stress that easily tears the body apart. If 3I Atlas were to pass through Jupiter's inner gravity while maintaining absolute structural integrity, the official argument that it was merely a natural, fragile rock would be completely destroyed. Surviving those immense gravitational forces requires a rigid, highly engineered internal framework specifically designed to withstand extreme mechanical stress. Yet, long before 3I Atlas reached Jupiter, institutional authorities had already finalized their long-term narrative strategy. The apparatus of public information management was running at maximum capacity, structured to handle any outcome without losing control of the public narrative. Academic institutions were equipped with pre-approved theoretical frameworks. Public relations offices were provided with standardized response scripts, and information protocols were locked down to ensure that raw instrument feeds would never reach the open internet. Regardless of what occurred during the Jupiter flyby, the public version of events had already been written, reviewed, and finalized. The scientists working within this restrictive system found themselves in an agonizing professional dilemma. They were holding verified, cross-analyzed data confirming that an interstellar craft had navigated through our solar system, exhibiting characteristics that no natural model could explain. This evidence was not based on subjective observations or speculative theories, but on hard, calibrated readings recorded across multiple independent sensor networks. Yet, history demonstrates that information of this magnitude cannot remain permanently contained within any administrative vault. Secret classifications can delay the truth, but they cannot eliminate the physical data. Officials were likely motivated not by simple malice, but by a deep, existential fear of how human society might react to undisputed proof that humanity is not the primary intelligence in the universe. A sudden, unmanaged announcement could spark widespread panic, disrupt global economic systems, and undermine foundational social structures. By tightly controlling the flow of information, authorities hoped to buy time. Time to build managed frameworks that could eventually introduce this transformative reality to the public in small, controlled stages, avoiding the shock of a sudden revelation. Throughout its entire transit, nothing in the probe's behavior displayed any signs of hostility. It executed a cold, highly efficient survey of our solar system, gathered detailed environmental data, adjusted its velocity, and began its departure into the deep dark of space. It conducted a systematic, technologically sophisticated reconnaissance sweep of a developing star system, leaving behind unambiguous proof of its existence for those who had the instruments to see it. Human civilization now occupies a profound position, watching a silent traveler vanish over the cosmic horizon after a brief, extraordinary encounter. The probe gathered its required data, adjusted its flight path using Jupiter's gravity assist, and fired its propulsion systems to accelerate toward the interstellar void. The information it collected during its brief sweep through our cosmic neighborhood is now traveling across vast distances, bound for a destination so far away that the light travel time alone spans thousands of human generations. The question of what final signal the probe might transmit back to its creators as it exits our solar system remains locked within classified military and scientific archives. It may have broadcast a high-density data package containing atmospheric compositions, electromagnetic profiles, and evidence of an emerging technological species on Earth. Or perhaps it simply logged our star system as one entry among billions in a galactic database that was established long before our sun first ignited. Despite the absolute enforcement of institutional secrecy, long-term suppression of this reality is fundamentally impossible. Files exist on secure servers, raw instrument logs are archived across multiple networks, and the human individuals who analyze those numbers carry both a conscience and a desire to share the truth. Eventually, the unedited telemetry, the scrubbed spectroscopic scans, and the full electromagnetic recordings will find their way into the public domain. When that complete record finally emerges, it will trigger a profound, irreversible shift in how humanity understands its place in the cosmos. We will be forced to accept that the universe is active, ancient, and populated by intelligence operating on scales we are only beginning to comprehend. If you want to stay ahead of the real discoveries shaping our world and explore the deep scientific mysteries that mainstream channels leave unanswered, make sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on all notifications, and share your detailed thoughts on this discovery in the comments section below.